Good afternoon and welcome everyone to another lunchtime lunch and learn this week on updating items and fees. Those of you who have been attending these regularly will know we did a previous one on items and fees, but this one's new and improved. So thanks for joining us again. As a recap, please make sure you mute your microphone by clicking on the microphone button on the top left corner there of your sidebar. It looks like everyone also use that orange arrow in the top, just above it there to minimize your sidebar. Feel free to type any questions in the chat section as we go along, and we'll hopefully be able to answer some questions at the end there as well. Okay, so items and fees. I thought this time I'd quickly just recap what items and fees actually are. You can see here I've jumped into Zedmed. If, say, for instance, we go into a patient, let's pick our stereotypical Zedmed patient here. We'll do a bill here. So these are the service items. What we're going to be discussing today are the service items you can put in. So common things for GPs might be numbers like a 23 item. So the system here already knows for a 23 item in certain circumstances, that might cost $50. These are the items, what particular items we have. So I could add another one in here as well. Whoops, forgot to add the treating doctor. Maybe another one, could be 104. So these are the sort of things that we're discussing, the items, the service items, what the patient's being charged for, but also the fee type here as well. Because for each item, we can have a wide range of different fees that might be applicable to that particular item. In different circumstances, the individual doctors might have their own particular rate for that particular item. Medicare would have a particular rate for that item. There's DVA. And for those of you who are doing in-hospital billing, might also have some of the health funds in the system there as well. So now, these fees do regularly change. We recommend that you designate a member of your staff, or some sites do it with their IT staff, who regularly, once a month, jump onto our Zedmed website and see if there's any new schedule files to be downloaded. Because once upon a time, Medicare, the health funds and so on only used to update their items and fees once or twice a year. These days, some of them come out every month. Some of them come out sporadically. So our recommendation is to designate a member of your staff who once a month, we normally encourage around about the end of the first week of each month, jumps onto the Zedmed website and has a look to see in our particular folder to see whether there's any updates that need to be done. And that's the process I'm going to be going through today. So what you do there, just swing this up here. Be opening website here. You go to the Zedmed website, zedmed.com.au. And you'll go to this login section here. Seems our testing environment's a little slow. Evidently, it doesn't like me running two at the same time. Okay, best laid plans and all of that. Okay, I've got a backup plan there. Okay, heading to the Zedmed website. Apologies for this. This one come through in the end. Okay. Here we go. So this is the login. You go to the, you've given this page here, the client login. And now this particular login is, if you don't have, this is not the login that you use for your Zedmed. That's this is a login that you specifically set up for the section of the Zedmed website. If you don't have one of these, you can request an account here, and it usually gets approved within the day. You could have just one for your whole clinic, or each member of your staff there could have one, but often it will just be whoever needs it can have a login to this section here. So I'll just put my login in. Okay. Now, there's a variety of different things you can do in this particular login section of the Zedmed site. We'll just jump into this client login area. You could ignore everything apart from these yellow folders. Yeah, as I was saying, there's a variety of useful things on this particular site. You can download extra clinical templates, forms and things that you can load into your system there, documents with manuals and things. The Mbs updates you can download from there. Obviously, you still need your password. Release notes and updates of the software are there as well. What you're going to want to do is you're going to jump into this fee file update section. Now, for the purpose of this particular session, we'll pretend that it's March of 2020. Because I think you'll all agree that a lot's happened since then. So the usual process, we'll jump into, 2020, we'll find the March folder, because that's where we're pretending it's March at the moment. See a whole bunch of, now we will be downloading a bunch of these files and loading them into Zedmed. Some months there'll be a lot of things in this section. Some months there'll be very few. What you want to do is you want to look through these particular files and download the ones that are relevant to you. There will be an MBS file, the Medicare file. In this particular case, they've hidden it under the phrase updated. My recommendation to download there is to right-click on that and do Save Link As. Save link, and often people will put it on their desktop, in a folder on their desktop, and save it there, somewhere you can find that's easy for you to get back to. So like I say, pretty much every month there'll be an MBS one there. Every now and then there'll be DVA files. You see there's 3 DVA files there. You can right click on those again and do Save Link As, save them to that same folder. From time to time, they may be work cover items. Files for the motor vehicles. Another still billing, you see there's a whole variety such as Booper and so on. You download relevant to you in your site there. Let's just jump back to the Zedmed here. Wow, so that never got through. Anyway, close that there. So that was downloading the fee updates. You download the files to your computer, to that folder on your computer, and then we're going to be uploading them into Zedmed. So remember this process, once you've got the swing of this process, it'll take one person maybe 7 to 10 minutes once a month. We strongly recommend that you do it every month. If you haven't done it for a while, if your site gets a little bit lazy and has skipped it, that's not a great thing. It's best to be on top of it. Obviously, the longer it has been since you last did it, the more work you'll need to do to get the site up to date. Say, for instance, I hadn't updated my fees since July last year. You can't just download the most recent files and load them in, because they will only have the newest item codes. If you're doing some billing for the past, and if I hadn't updated my fees since July last year and I wanted to do some billing for October last year, I wouldn't have those precise fees in the system. Even if I loaded the fees from March this year, that would just be the fees from March this year. It wouldn't know how much the fees were in October. So if you haven't updated them in a while, what you will need to do is go back to the first month that you missed, go onto that Zedmed website, just go through each of those months. So last year, I'd load any relevant fees from January, fees from one. Now, here's the process. We'll be coming back to this in a couple of times. So each month, do these things in order. You won't necessarily need all 3 of these steps each time, but if you do need each of them, it's good to do them in this particular order. So you see the first item there, adding any new item codes you might require using the MBS file. Then after that, well, and you almost never will, it'll be pretty rare, apart from like COVID and telehealth, stuff like that you need to add any new item codes in. So most of the time you won't be needing that item number 1. But if you do have it, you do that first. Step number 2 there, updating the MBS fees. You pretty much will always need to do that one there. Almost every month, there'll be a new MBS fee file will come out. And then the third step there, updating any other health fund files that you've downloaded from the Zedmed website there. So DVA, work cover, health funds if they're relevant to you. And in that particular case, you use those other files, the DVA files, the work cover files, and so on to update those fees. So we'll go through each of those in order. So for the first one there, adding new item codes into Zedmed. Let's jump back into our Zedmed over here. Cancel out of this invoice here. Inside Zedmed, if you're wanting to do anything to do with the items and fees, you go to we're in the Office half here, you go to the Management tab. Down on the left-hand side here, you've got Practice Setup. Inside Practice Setup, we go down to Items, and you see these last 2 options here. update/load MBS fees and update other fees. That's steps 1 and 2 on my list there correspond to this one. Step 3 corresponds to this one here. So if you recall, what we were doing first is adding any fees that are not currently any new item codes rather than not in our system at the moment. So we'll go into update/load MBS fees. On this screen here, so you've got two modes up in the top there. Load, that's the one we use for putting in new item codes. That corresponds to step number 1, and update corresponds to step number 2. So let's load a new item code in. Well, let's see, 2546. So we just put in that item code there, and we come down, skip all the middle bit, and come down here to load item. So opens the folder here. Let's find where I saved that file I downloaded from the Zedmed website. Let's go to my desktop here, and I saved them in the folder fee updates. And this is where if I downloaded the March file, it would have been there. So you will always run this using the file for the current month. But I'll use this January one here. So I can select that, open it there. It's recognized the item, and it's filled in the full description down the bottom here. Now, it's very important after that we put something in this short description section here above it. The easiest, while you can just type your own description in there, the easiest, slackest thing you can do just for the moment is to copy some of that text there and paste it in. You'll see it only has a short portion of that text, so you can feel free to change around that description if you like. This is the description that will appear on the patient's invoices and throughout your system. So then I can come down to the bottom here, click continue, loaded that item in. So I come back up the top here again, and I can put another one in now if I like, 2552. So coming back down here, load, go back to that fee updates folder. Remember, it could have been called anything, but this is where I saved them to. And open that file again. You will have the option to change the short description later on if you like. This time, maybe I will try an item that maybe I've I'm not sure whether the item's in the system yet or not, so let's put in 104. Of course, we'll know 104 will be in the system. Let's have a look. I'm going to try and load that one in. And you see it said 0 items loaded. That's the way it tells us that that item's already in the system. Okay, so that's step number 1, and most months you won't need to do that step there. And when you do, there's probably only going to be a small number of items there. When it is, you use the MBS item, the MBS file for that. So usually you can skip that step because you won't need it. Next step there, updating MBS fees. Pretty much every month you will need to do this particular item. It's pretty much every month there will be an MBS fee file will come out. Let's just jump back into slide of that. So remember this, we get to that through management, practice setup, items, update/load MBS fees. Of course, that is the same one we were in before, but this time in the mode up the top here, we're going to pick update existing MBS items. Obviously, you can see the screen changes dramatically there. Right, on the right-hand side here, you put the date. You put the date of the current month, the first of the current month. Now remember, we're pretending it's March at the moment, so I'll put in the 1st of March there. You've got to be very careful that you don't. It'll pretty much always default to May or November here. But to make sure that you put the right month there, the month that we're updating. Or else there could be quite a few problems in the system there. And it will also question you about your choice here. So make sure you double, triple check what particular date you put there. Like I say, we're loading in the file we're pretending is the March file. Just see if I can download that. I'll download that one again. No, we'll just go for that one. So we're putting March there. We've got update selected there. So update. Now it's always going to, if we've picked our own date there, which we pretty much always will need to, it will ask us whether we were sure about that particular date, because it still thinks that probably we either want May or November. So you will always get this screen up here. So when you see this screen here, would you like to use the system calculated date? We should be picking no on this. If we pick yes, it'll automatically set it back to May there. We're wanting it to load March. So we're saying no. Go back to the update again to click on that. Back to where we saved those particular files. This time you'll notice that the file has disappeared. But if we click on the bottom right corner here, change to XML files, we can see that file again there. Just for pretends, I'm just going to call this March. I'm merely doing this because we were unable to get from this particular computer connect to the website. So we've got the March file there. So I'll select that one and click open down here. There'll be a short pause there. It'll look like it's not doing anything, but you wait for a few moments. And then it will, there you go, update the items and fees. So once it's done that, you've finished step number 2. It's updated the items and fees. Even if you've got multiple branches there, it will update it. It'll update it for all of them. So that was step number 2, updating MBS fees. You pretty much need to do that every month. Like I say, you saw how quick the process was there. The third step there, updating DVA, health funds, so on. When you're doing that, you always do that as the third step there. Many months, there won't be any DVA files. There might not be any work cover files or TAC files, or if it's relevant to you, there might not be any health fund files, but you always need to check that website, our website, once a month to see whether those files have come in. Back in here. So once again, remember we come up to the management tab there, down to practice setup, down to items, and this time we use that last option there, update other fees. Once again, we need to make sure that we've got the right date set up the top there, because it's March at the moment. We need to set it to March there, and once again, it will question us about the date we've put in here. So we're going to skip right to the bottom section here, where it says load from file. You see that's grayed out there. So we'll move just above that to where it says from fee or from file. We'll click on from file. Then depending on which files we've downloaded from the website, whether we've downloaded, say for instance, DVA is a common one that lots of GPs will have, we will go into this drop down here and find DVA. So that, remember, there's always going to be 3 DVA files: DVA LMO, DVA in, and DVA out. Like I say, in some months, you won't have any DVA or any other files to do, so you'll be able to skip this whole section. But let's load in DVA LMO. So pick that option there, load from file. Once again, it's automatically gone into the fee updates folder there. Normally I'd be opening the January folder there. If you don't see any, the March folder, if you don't see the files you're looking for in this section here, like if it looks blank, come to the bottom right corner here and pick all files. Scroll down on this list here, and we should have some DVA. There you go, DVA LMO. Select that one and open. Remember I said it's always going to question us on whichever the date we've chosen, but seeing as we're saying it is March at the moment, the date that this fee update is effective is not, are you sure you want to continue? So it's actually asking the question the reverse of the previous question about dates. So this time we actually want to say yes, that we do want to continue. Depending on how large the file is, might take longer. Okay, now you see it will always at the end of that process say no item fees have been updated, even if it has updated some item fees. That's just, you can safely ignore that one there. That's just a minor bug in the system. So even if it has updated fees, it'll always say no item fees. So that was updating the DVA LMO fee, but then we could move along to say, for instance, DVA in. We would do load, find the DVA in file there, load that one, and so on. I won't do it for the moment, but you get the picture. If you needed to load some of the health fund files, you can see the particular ones you would select for them. If you're needing to load in, let's see, have we got, if you've got TAC for the motor vehicles, or a Return to Work South Australia, if you're there, that will load in under the term motor vehicle here. WorkSafe will load in as work cover. Yeah. Once you've loaded in all of the relevant files for your current month, that will be it, and you will have finished that step number 3 there. So just to recap briefly, those 3 steps, you always do them in those orders if they're relevant. But so most of the time, that's step number 1, adding new item codes. Most of the time, most months you won't need that. Step number 2, updating MBS fees. Pretty much every month you'll need that. There's normally an MBS file comes out each month. And that last step, updating DVA, work cover, health funds, whatever, that you do as needed. Some months there'll be lots to do there. Some months there won't be any. But usually, once you know what you're doing, just jump onto the Zedmed website, download the files, load them in. Won't take more than about 10 minutes, and it's certainly will be worth it to stay on top of the prices, so that you're not charging your patients incorrect amounts. Okay, So there's some extra special items in the system there called derived items. If we jump into the system here, so heading back to reception, management, practice setup, and down to items again. If we pick this top option here, item details, type in a code like 23, enter, and then enter again. You can see what we've got here with the item number at the top. We've got a whole page of prices for this one particular item number, 23. You see I can use the buttons in the bottom left-hand corner here to move across to different items. So I don't have to find, I can just scan through them all. And we can even see as a bit of a short guide in the top right corner there, that validity period generally shows when these items were last updated. So if you look at your validity period on your site and see that that is a long time ago, or at least last year or something like that, that's when your items and fees were last updated. But if we go back to one of the earlier numbers there, say for instance 23, and slowly scan through some of the items there, we want to see whether there's any items that have this derivation section set down in the bottom here. As you'll see, pretty much immediately, I found one of them here. So this is item number 24. The fees for it are based on the fees for 23, plus some add-ons for multiples. So after I've updated my items and fees, I should come into this section, scan through, go through the different items, and see whether any of these derivation ones have changed. So if there's something marked as a derivation item, in this case, I jump over to the Details tab at the top here. And if I scan through this full description here, as you see, it says it's just confirming for us that it's item 23, and there will be two $2 values. So this is $26.75 and $2.10. So I'll come back to the tab here, $26.75 and $2.10. Excellent. So it looks like that one hasn't changed. You could also click on this Get Derivation item there as well, just to confirm in case that particular item 23 changed. It looks like none of that's changed, so we'll move along. It automatically saves when you move along. Not a derivation item. Okay, this one's a derivation item. So remember to update the price there in case 36 updated. Click Get Derivation Item first. Didn't look like it changed, but then we'd go back to the Details tab there, get those dollar values, $26.75 and $2.10. Okay, excellent. In that case, they hadn't changed as well. If you did need to update them, you could just overtype them on this screen here. And so on, as you click through them, you'll find extra codes in the system there. Usually they tend to be fairly low numbers there, but you'll, depending on your specific site, some of these codes might be there, some of them might not be there. We've also got private doctor fees. Some of you might know it as P1, P2, and so on. So for all of these items, let's just skip back a little here. It's got item 36, for instance, here. You might see it says something about private third-party fees in the top right corner here. That's actually just a small little fragment of a larger screen. If we move on to the Doctors tab here, you'll see we have some of our separate doctors set up here. Dr. Costanza, Dr. Seinfeld, Dr. Crimea, Dr. Shea, and so on. This is where we could set up, for this specific item, we could set up the different rates the different doctors charge for it. So Dr. Costanza charges $90 for item 36. Dr. Seinfeld charges $100 for it. So we can also set a discount amount there as well that can be selected as part of the billing process. So these particular items, you can just manually change on here. So say, for instance, Dr. Seinfeld had put his rate up by 110 to 110, you could just type that manually into there. Remember, that's just, once again, that's just for this particular item number, 36. Let's now change the particular fee there. You can move through them all that way there. If you did want to name these particular labels here, you come down to this button, Codes to Descriptions, and edit or change the names directly here. If you needed to switch some of these particular rows off so it doesn't confuse people in billing, you can just click, you can just press N on there or click on the drop down. Pressing N's sufficient. Won't hide it from this screen, but it'll hide it from the billing process. A second way of doing the doctor's items and fee, the doctor's private fees, is if you're wanting all of the doctor's fees to change by a certain percentage or dollar amount, come back into the practice setup, back to items again, back down to update other fees. We could say, for instance, well, and remember to put the appropriate day up the top there. So remember it's March at the moment, so I'm putting the 1st of March there. And instead of picking from file down the bottom here, we'll leave it set to from fee. So say, for instance, we're saying we're wanting Dr. Costanza's new fees to be the same as his fees were previously, but perhaps increased by $20. See in the middle there? So it says whatever his fees were previously, plus $20, store that as his current fee. So it would go through all of his different items there as well. Alternatively, you could do increase by, say for instance, 2%. So that's saying take all of his existing fees there, calculate an extra 2% on that and store it back into his existing fees, his fee spots there. And by default, it'll round to the nearest 5 cents. And that's just a pretty swift process there. We can just select, remember that's 2% on his existing fees. We can just come and then click update. Remember once again on this particular screen, it's saying, are you sure you want to continue? So on this screen, not the other screen, but on this screen, we click yes to continue. Always read these messages about the dates carefully. Yep, and then boom, took that fast to update all of his fees. Now, if you have perhaps a lot of doctors with a lot of very precise fees, there's a third alternate that you could use as well. You could make a spreadsheet for each doctor, listing every one of their items. So this is the spreadsheet here for Dr. Costanza. Here's a whole heap of his item codes with the particular amount that he's going to be charging for that. So you could, if you create one of those Excel spreadsheets and save it in CSV format, you can jump in Zedmed here and act exactly the same as if you were loading in the DVA file. So click from file there, but leave the fee set to Dr. Costanza. Go down the bottom here, load from file. Let's see all files there. And we might have a Dr. Costanza, oops, scroll too far. Dr. Costanza file there that we can just load in exactly the same way we loaded the DVA files in. That's a bit of a more of a super user use. Most sites won't need that, but do have a chat with us if you're thinking of setting up something like that, so we can make sure you're on the right track there. Our last item that we're going to be covering here is non-MBS item codes. Now, most of the items you'll be using will be MBS items, but from time to time you'll be wanting to bill patients for something that's outside of MBS. Maybe you're wanting to charge them a certain fee for writing up reports or telephone calls, things like that. You can add your own arbitrary miscellaneous codes into the system. So let's go into practice setup down to items, item details. When we're here in item details, remember we'll normally be using this top section here to search for something, say for instance, item 23. But if instead we search for something like the term report, the report doesn't actually exist in the system, so it's going to give us the option to make report into a code. So let's do find, not found. Do you want to add a new item record? Now I must stress that if you type an MBS code into the system and it comes up with this, don't put MBS codes into the system using this way. That will not work properly. So you only should put MBS, you should only put miscellaneous, your own non-MBS item codes into the system this way. MBS items should only ever go into the system through that, you loading the MBS file like I showed you earlier. And in this particular case, the alphabetic ones, so for instance, report, or some sites have MISC, things like that, you can safely put them in through the section. So do you want to add that one? We'll say yes. Let's see, short description. Remember, always important to put a short description in. Fee for writing a report. Something like that. Obviously, we won't have any of these particular fees for it, but if we go into the doctors tab there, we could say Dr. Costanza charges $30 for that, and Dr. Seinfeld charges $45 for doing that. So obviously, this particular item won't be claimable to Medicare or the health funds. This is just entirely for privately billing your patients there. So if we close that and go back into it again, you'll see that now we can search for report and it comes up in the system there. If at some stage down the track you decide you don't want this particular item, you can always go up into the top here and put an end to that validity period. If you put an end on that validity period there, so a date that's passed, this particular item will not be selectable after that particular date. I'll show you putting that item into the system anyway, putting it in an invoice. Let's open Zedmed again. Doing a bill. See, this particular patient has been set up doing a private billing to this one. So, and it already knows that this particular patient usually gets billed as P1, which we happen to know from down here. P1 is the Dr. Costanza fee. Let's type report in there. Let me George Costanza again. And you see the new item we've added in appears there. It's got $30 because we've selected Dr. Costanza. Alternatively, we could select Dr. Seinfeld and we'll just adjust the amount there as well. That's what we've got so far in this particular session. I might pause the recording and we'll